A camera filled with terror, 2 backpacks that shouldn't exist, weeks of silence, then suddenly clues that made no sense. And buried in a memory card, nearly 100 photographs captured in pitch-black darkness, each one more chilling than the last. The sun should have brought them home. It was supposed to be simple, a few hours, maybe less. Just 2 friends, young and alive with possibility, stepping into the emerald wilderness draped across the mountains of Panama. Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, both from the Netherlands, packed light that morning. A couple of phones, 1 camera, some snacks. No survival gear, no local guide. Just the innocent confidence of travelers exploring somewhere new. But the sunset came and went, and they didn't. There was no goodbye, no frantic call, no witnesses to whatever happened next. One moment they were there, smiling, walking, breathing, and the next, they had dissolved into the jungle like morning fog. Days bled into weeks, families waited, searchers combed the mountains, and then when hope had nearly turned to ash, something surfaced, something that had no business being found. But the evidence didn't bring relief, it brought dread. Why was an emergency number dialed over and over only to be abandoned each time? Who was desperately trying to break into Lisanne's phone more than a week after both women vanished? And what kind of nightmare unfolded during those dark hours when that camera started clicking, frame after frame, deep in the blackness of the jungle? What really happened on that trail? This would become one of the most haunting mysteries of the modern age, and the photographs they left behind? They didn't provide answers. They only deepened the horror. Chris Kremers was 21 years old. She'd just earned her degree in cultural social education, a reflection of someone who cared deeply about people. Chris wasn't loud or impulsive. She was thoughtful, deliberate, the kind of person who observed before she spoke. She loved art, loved capturing moments through her camera. Friends described her as mature beyond her years, someone you could trust completely. She was the type who thought things through. Lisanne Froon was 22, a psychology graduate with fire inside her. She played volleyball with fierce joy. Lisanne was optimism personified, spontaneous, bold, always ready to leap before she looked. Where Chris was careful, Lisanne was daring. Where Chris paused, Lisanne charged ahead. Together, they were perfect opposites. They completed each other. Both women called Amersfoort home, a quiet city in the Netherlands. Their friendship had been forged in a small cafe where they both worked part-time. But they weren't just passing time. They were building something. For 6 long months, they saved every cent. Extra shifts, late nights, sacrificed weekends. Every euro went toward a single dream: Latin America. But this wasn't some reckless adventure. Chris and Lisanne had a purpose. They wanted to volunteer with children who had nothing. They wanted to learn Spanish, immerse themselves in a new culture, and give back to communities that needed help. This trip was about meaning, about growth, about becoming better versions of themselves. Panama was everything they'd imagined: vibrant, wild, full of color and life. After arriving, they moved through the country with wide eyes, documenting everything. They explored Bocas del Toro, soaking in the coastal beauty, then made their way inland to Boquete, a serene mountain town known for cool weather, coffee plantations, and hiking trails that wound through cloud forests. It was here they'd begin their volunteer work. But before responsibilities started, they decided to do something small, something innocent. Just a short hike, the 2 of them, alone. They left notes about their plans. They posed for photos with other travelers, faces glowing with excitement. To anyone watching, they were simply 2 bright, hopeful young women standing at the start of something meaningful, full of dreams, full of trust, full of life. That hike was supposed to be the beginning. Instead, it became the end. It was April 1st, 2014. The morning broke gently over Boquete, Panama. A soft coolness lingered in the mountain air, and mist clung to the peaks. Chris and Lisanne woke up in the modest homestay where they'd been living for only a few days. They were still settling in, preparing for the volunteer work ahead. But that morning, something pulled them outside. The mountains were calling. They told their host family they were going for a hike. Nothing serious, just a walk. They mentioned a trail called El Pianista, a well-known path, popular with tourists and locals. It wasn't considered dangerous. It was beautiful, winding through lush cloud forest where trees grew thick and the air stayed damp and cool. But it was also the kind of place where you could lose your way. Still, Chris and Lisanne weren't worried. They left around 11 in the morning. A dog from a nearby restaurant decided to follow them. People saw them that day. Locals remembered the two young women walking with the dog, smiling, wearing light clothing. No heavy backpacks, no GPS, no guide. Just their phones, a camera, some water, and the optimism that comes from youth. Earlier that morning, Lisanne had posted on Facebook about exploring the area. Everything seemed normal, routine, safe. But that night, something shifted. The dog came back, alone. At first, the host family didn't think much of it. Maybe the girls took a different route. Maybe they stayed out longer, caught up in the forest's beauty. No one panicked. Not yet. But the next morning, unease began to creep in. Chris and Lisanne had a scheduled meeting with a local guide. Something they'd arranged days in advance, but they never showed up. When their families tried reaching them, nothing. No replies, no updates. The messages that had flowed so freely just a day before had stopped completely. At first it was just strange. Then it became terrifying. One moment, they were walking into the jungle, laughing, alive. The next moment, it was as if the earth had opened up and swallowed them whole. No trace, no sound, no sign. They were never seen alive again. That was the moment the nightmare began. By April 6th, 5 agonizing days after Chris and Lisanne disappeared into the Panamanian jungle, panic had transformed into desperation. Their parents couldn't sit still anymore. They couldn't wait by phones in the Netherlands, helpless and an ocean away. So they boarded a plane, but they didn't come alone. Dutch detectives arrived with them, trained search dogs, professionals who understood how to navigate dangerous terrain. This wasn't a casual search anymore. The moment they landed, a $30,000 reward was announced. The news spread like wildfire. Through Boquete, into the villages, across the mountainsides. Indigenous communities heard about it. Mountain guides heard about it. The reward brought more than money. It brought urgency. The search became massive. Teams formed quickly, pushing deeper into the wilderness. Some groups hacked through dense undergrowth with machetes. Others scanned from above using helicopters and drones. Locals volunteered. Foreigners joined in. The entire region mobilized. Search dogs tracked scents. Experts analyzed terrain. People who had spent their lives in those mountains used every ounce of knowledge. Days turned into weeks. The jungle revealed nothing, not a single clue. No phone, no clothing, no footprint, nothing. It was as if the forest had erased them deliberately, swallowed them into its depths, and refused to give anything back. Then on June 14th, more than 2 months after the disappearance, a woman from a nearby indigenous village was walking along the banks of a river near Alto Romero. And there, sitting on a rock by the water's edge, she spotted something that didn't belong. A blue backpack. She stopped, stared at it. Something felt wrong immediately. The backpack wasn't floating. It wasn't tangled in branches or buried in mud. It looked placed. And strangest of all, it was completely dry. Despite relentless tropical rains, the backpack looked untouched by water. She picked it up, opened it. Inside, she found 2 pairs of sunglasses, a plastic water bottle, $88 in cash, 2 bras, Lisanne Froon's passport, 2 phones, a Samsung Galaxy and an iPhone, and a Canon digital camera. Everything was intact. No water damage, no mold, no scratches. The electronics worked. The documents were pristine. It looked like someone had packed it the night before and gently placed it on that rock. The backpack belonged to Lisanne. But nothing about its condition made sense. The discovery changed everything. Now the focus shifted to the devices inside. What had happened after they vanished? The phones told a story, a quiet, chilling story. On April 1st, the very day Chris and Lisanne disappeared, the first emergency call was attempted at 4:39 p.m. Someone dialed 112, Panama's emergency number. The call didn't connect. No signal. 12 minutes later, at 4:51 p.m., they tried again. Still nothing. The next morning they tried again, and again. Over the following days, multiple attempts were made using both phones. Sometimes within minutes of each other, sometimes hours apart. There was a rhythm, a pattern. Try the phone whenever there might be signal. Hope. Wait. Try again. The last time Lisanne's Samsung phone was used was on April 5th. After that, only Chris's iPhone was turned on. But something was deeply wrong. Whoever was using the iPhone kept entering the wrong PIN code. This happened on April 6th, then April 7th, April 8th, April 9th, April 10th. Every single day, the same disturbing routine. Phone powered on, wrong code entered, phone shut off. Then came April 11th. That day, the phone was turned on one final time. It stayed powered on for over an hour. After that, silence. The phone was never activated again. No more calls. No more attempts. No more signs of life. That's when investigators began asking the questions that would haunt this case forever. Who was trying to access Chris's phone? And why couldn't they unlock it? If it was Chris herself, why didn't she know her own code? If it was Lisanne, didn't she know her friend's password? Or was it someone else entirely? Someone who had possession of the phone for days but had no idea how to break into it. This timeline didn't just show survival, it showed something wrong. And there was more. The backpack had been found miles away from the original hiking trail. Alto Romero was dangerously far from where Chris and Lisanne had planned to walk. It was rugged, remote territory, nowhere near tourist paths. How did the backpack travel that distance? Why was it undamaged? Why were the electronics bone dry? Why were the items carefully packed instead of scattered or destroyed? None of it added up. The phones gave investigators a timeline, but they didn't provide answers. Only questions. And one question rose above all others. Who was with those girls after April 1st? And why did everything suddenly go silent on April 11th? After the backpack was recovered and the phones examined, investigators turned to the one piece of evidence that remained untouched. The camera. It belonged to Lisanne, and inside its memory card was a fragment of the story that no one anticipated. At first, the photos were exactly what you'd expect. Daytime shots taken during the hike. The girls smiling, taking selfies, walking through sunlight along forest trails. They looked happy, carefree, relaxed. No fear in their eyes. The sun was bright, the scenery stunning. Everything looked normal. But then investigators found something else. Something that made their blood run cold. 8 days after Chris and Lisanne disappeared, the camera had been used again. Not just once, over 90 times. All photos taken between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. in the dead of night. No more smiles, no more selfies, just darkness. Most images were almost entirely black. But when contrast was adjusted, when shadows were lifted, fragments began to emerge. Pieces of something incomprehensible. In one photo, there's a large rock. On it sits a twig or stick, carefully wrapped in red plastic bags. The arrangement looks deliberate, intentional, as if someone placed it there for a reason. Another image shows what appears to be a backpack strap positioned beside a mirror resting on a rock. Again, the items seem staged, positioned with purpose. Then there's the photo that stops your heart, the clearest image of them all. It shows the back of Chris Kramer's head. Her red hair is neat, almost carefully arranged. Her skin looks pale in the camera's flash. She's facing away from the lens. You can't see her face, you can't see her eyes. You can't tell if she's awake, asleep, unconscious, or something worse. Other photos seem random, chaotic. The camera appears pointed blindly into the void. Tree branches, rocks, sections of the jungle floor. Sometimes the flash captures nothing but empty darkness. Sometimes it catches something, but what exactly is impossible to say. The biggest question remained: why were these photos taken at all? Why would someone take nearly 100 photographs in total darkness in the middle of the night, 8 days after vanishing? Some investigators believed it was a desperate signal. Maybe they were using the camera's flash as a beacon, hoping rescuers might see the light cutting through trees, a cry for help when their voices could no longer carry. Others thought the photos were documentation, a final record, evidence for whoever might find the camera later. The haunting mystery, complete rewrite. Then something darker emerged, a theory that sent chills down everyone's spine. What if they weren't alone out there? Were Chris and Lisanne behind the camera, or did someone else press that shutter button? And if the girls took those images, why would they still be in that merciless jungle 8 full days later? Had the wilderness trapped them hopelessly? Did panic force them to separate, each searching for salvation? Or does the truth hide something far more sinister? The photographs provided no clarity. Instead, they multiplied the questions tenfold. Every image deepened the enigma. No discernible pattern, no hidden message, only the oppressive silence of an unforgiving jungle frozen in time. What transpired during those dark hours? Why photograph only the back of Chris's head? What significance did those plastic bags hold? Why arrange rocks and position a mirror so deliberately? Why capture dozens of photographs in frantic succession, only to abruptly stop? These haunting images became the pulse of this investigation, the most bewildering element of an already incomprehensible story. While the phones documented desperate attempts to reach civilization, the photographs whispered something entirely different, something unnatural, something that defied explanation. Even now, years later, the complete truth remains buried. Who pressed that camera button in the darkness? And what were they attempting to reveal or conceal? Months crawled by before the first disturbing clues surfaced. Search teams, exhausted but determined, stumbled upon a discovery that made their blood run cold. Chris's denim shorts lay draped across a rock on the far bank of a tributary, several kilometers from where Froon's backpack had been recovered. The location seemed impossibly wrong. Initially, whispers spread that someone had carefully folded the shorts, deliberately placed with purpose. This detail consumed media coverage for months. Then, in 2021, newly surfaced photographs shattered that theory. The shorts hadn't been folded at all. They'd been abandoned carelessly. This revelation deepened the mystery exponentially. How did Chris's shorts reach that opposite riverbank? Had she crossed intentionally, or had circumstances spiraled catastrophically? What came next was truly horrifying. Skeletal remains belonging to both women, scattered like forgotten puzzle pieces along the riverbank. Two vibrant souls with unlimited potential had been reduced to bone fragments, dispersed across a merciless landscape. The remains weren't even complete. Lisanne's foot, still enclosed in her hiking boot, was discovered among the fragments, a detail that haunts everyone who learns of it. Additional pieces of her pelvis were located nearby, each discovery adding fresh horror. Chris's remains painted an equally disturbing picture. Her ribs and foot bones were positioned at a completely different section of riverbank, separated from her companion. Disturbingly, no clothing or belongings surrounded these bones, generating agonizing questions about their final moments. Medical examiners performed thorough autopsies, but the results brought frustration rather than illumination. No trauma appeared on either woman's skeletal structure. No injuries, no violence, nothing indicating they'd been attacked. This absence of evidence created profound confusion. How had they arrived here? What caused two healthy women to die? A Panamanian forensic anthropologist later stated, "Under magnification, absolutely no discernible scratches appeared on the bones, neither from natural causes nor human intervention. The bones bore no marks whatsoever." This lack of evidence left the case wide open to endless interpretation. The deeper investigators dug, the less they comprehended. Zero signs of struggle presented themselves. An accidental fall seemed most rational, yet questions multiplied. Why had these hikers ventured so far off the trail? Why were their remains discovered apart? How had they traveled such an impossible distance from their last known location? Despite the tragic discoveries, no definitive answers materialized. The mystery only intensified. Questions outnumbered answers overwhelmingly. As years passed, the case evolved into one of modern history's most perplexing disappearances. The mysterious vanishing of Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon stands as one of the most chilling, unsolved cases. This tragedy spawned countless questions, and theories multiplied exponentially. Some believed this was an unfortunate accident, while others sensed something malevolent lurking beneath. Let's examine these theories and the controversies surrounding them. Theory 1. The tragic accident. Numerous investigators proposed that Chris and Lisanne's disappearance was simply a heartbreaking accident. They'd embarked on a hiking adventure through rugged terrain surrounding the Baru volcano, a destination celebrated for Panama's natural magnificence. Tragically, somewhere during their trek, these women became irretrievably lost, likely after straying from marked trails. Disorientation could have set in rapidly due to suffocating jungle density, unfamiliar surroundings, and extreme weather conditions. The terrain has a notorious reputation. Even experienced hikers report losing bearings on familiar paths. After becoming lost, they could have wandered aimlessly for days, desperately attempting to navigate back but ultimately succumbing to brutal elements. Dehydration would have attacked first, followed by exhaustion, then exposure their bodies couldn't withstand. Reports suggest the women frantically attempted transmitting distress signals, hoping someone might receive their calls. Evidence indicates they captured photographs with their camera, possibly attempting orientation or creating a visual SOS to alert authorities. Some photographs recovered later revealed deeply strange images, one showing Lisanne appearing severely distressed, another featuring what appeared to be mysterious light piercing through distance. Could these photographs represent evidence of their survival struggle? Or were they desperately documenting their movements, hoping to leave breadcrumbs for those who'd search? It's possible this was genuinely tragic accident, and search efforts were severely hindered by extreme regional conditions. The jungle keeps its secrets well. Theory 2. The dark shadow of foul play. However, a competing theory casts a darker shadow. Some investigators believe Chris and Lisanne may not have simply gotten lost, but became victims of deliberate foul play, targeted and destroyed by human malevolence. The area where they vanished is extremely remote, with documented history of violence including drug trafficking and criminal activity. Multiple reports confirm local residents and authorities had warned tourists against venturing beyond well-traveled paths, citing risks from dangerous criminal organizations operating freely. The possibility of third-party involvement cannot be dismissed, especially considering the eerie nature of recovered photographs. These images seemed calculated, deliberate, precise in ways suggesting intention. One photograph, captured near what investigators believe were their final hours, appeared to show a shadowy figure in the background, potentially indicating someone else's presence. Speculation emerged that the women may have been intentionally lured into an elaborate trap, with their final terror moments captured in haunting images. Could this have been calculated work of criminals targeting these foreign students? Adding weight to the mystery were bizarre, incorrect PIN entries repeatedly made on Lisanne's phone over consecutive days following disappearance. This behavior was deeply unsettling. Was someone trying to access their devices? Were the girls still alive, desperately trying to summon help, but too weak or disoriented to input correct codes? Or could someone else have been using their phones after their deaths? Investigative flaws and public criticism. The investigation was plagued with inexcusable flaws from the beginning. Despite intense international attention, critics argue Panamanian authorities catastrophically mishandled this case. Unconscionable delays plagued search efforts, and critical evidence appeared carelessly handled or overlooked entirely. Local police faced severe criticism for closing the case with shocking speed, despite unanswered questions. In 2017, Independent investigators reopened the case and raised serious red flags. New comprehensive reviews suggested foul play could have been involved, potentially connecting this tragedy to disturbing patterns of other unsolved local murders. Were Chris and Lisanne's deaths simply another tragic accident? Or was there deeper, more sinister connection to violence patterns that authorities had been ignoring or concealing? The frustrating lack of conclusive evidence combined with systematic failure to thoroughly investigate every lead only fueled growing conspiracy theories. Could someone have intentionally abandoned the women to die? Or was their fate sealed by harsh elements and unfortunate navigational errors, encouraging speculation? At this juncture, years after their disappearance, the case remains frustratingly open-ended, and speculation continues swirling. The haunting photographs and mysterious wrong pin entries only amplify the ambiguity, leaving room for various theories. Some believe this tragic tale represents nature's unforgiving wrath, while others feel convinced that criminal involvement looms over this story. In the maddening absence of definitive answers, the case continues captivating public imagination worldwide, leaving us to ponder: was this an accident, or was something far more sinister at play? The questions persist, multiplying each year, and passionate debate rages on. The official verdict. The case remains officially unsolved. Panama's authorities ruled it an accident. They believe the girls got lost, fell, and eventually died from exposure. But the families never accepted that. Dutch investigators questioned the evidence handling. Too much remained unexplained. Too many inconsistencies. To this day, Reddit threads dissect every recovered photograph obsessively. YouTube videos meticulously analyze shadows, timestamps, and topography. Online sleuths construct elaborate maps, cross-reference timelines, and zoom microscopically into blurred backgrounds searching for clues. Theories span from wild animal attacks to calculated foul play, from drug gangs to supernatural forces. But the truth? Still missing. Still hidden somewhere in that jungle. A warning that echoes. Chris and Lisanne's story has transformed into a cautionary tale, a story shared among travelers about risk, trust, and wild unknown territories beyond civilization's boundaries. But this story also represents profound frustration of justice delayed or denied. Their families desperately wanted answers, needed closure, deserved truth. What they received was bureaucratic silence and multiplying questions. What truly happened on that trail? Who took those final photographs in darkness? Who made those desperate phone attempts when hope faded? Why did rescue teams fail to locate them sooner? These questions echo through time, unanswered. In the end, what remains? Memory cards filled with images of fear. Scattered bones discovered months apart. A hiking trail that led nowhere except into darkness. And two vibrant young women who walked into a jungle one April morning and never returned home. Do not forget to subscribe for more real-life mysteries, unsolved cases, and chilling disappearances. Hit the bell so you never miss a story that might keep you up at night. And in the comments, tell us, what do you think really happened in the jungle? Sometimes the truth is buried deeper than we imagine.